Hey everybody, John Chow, Cruise Addicts here. Welcome to this wonderful Wednesday night. We've got Michael Consoli, a global top producer, 5 times for Viking Cruises, here to answer our questions all about COVID travel protocols. He just got back from a cruise to France aboard a Viking River Cruise, and I'm so excited to have him here. He's going to be able to answer all our questions. He literally just got back. He's going to tell us exactly what it takes to travel to Europe, all the different protocols. We've got some videos and some photos to share. We'd love to have your questions. Please ask them now. Please check in. Let us know what you have planned for your vacation. The good thing is we're actually still traveling. The world is still moving forward. Things are still happening all around the world. Things have not stopped. And so we're going to learn exactly what it takes to travel to Europe on a Viking cruise. And without further ado, we're going to have Michael join us, and we're going to go over different things, all these different timelines as far as what it takes during the whole travel experience. And we look forward to answering your questions, and we'll get Michael in here. Hi, Michael. Good evening.
Hey, John. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for joining us. And like I said, it's a real honor and privilege to have you here again. And I'm a little bit jealous about your trip. We got to see you a little bit the first day of when you got on board. But can you tell us about it?
Yeah, I mean, it was really great. We had a wonderful time, and I've gotten a lot of questions about protocols, so I thought we could talk a little bit about that tonight. But it was really an incredible trip and a great experience that I have to say was not really that inhibited by the COVID protocols.
So you said a lot of your clients are concerned about, they have a lot of questions, and they're concerned about a lot of the questions we're going to go over. And I guess it all starts as before departure.
Yeah, so I mean, before departure, there are several steps that the cruise line has provided to the guests in an email. So I just want to clarify that the steps that we're talking about were specific really to the Viking cruise that we did and, the departure from France. So we did Paris in the heart of Normandy, but I will say that I think the protocols will be similar for most of the other countries as well. But Viking is really, really, really good about sending out an email that summarizes exactly the steps that guests need to take in order to get on, to get to the country where their ship is departing from and to get on board the ship. And those steps pretty much entail, downloading the Verifly app, which is an app that is used to verify COVID vaccination, that the guest has been vaccinated for COVID. The Verifly app will verify that information for the cruise line, and many of the airlines are using the Verifly app for that same consideration. So that is the first step. And then, of course, each country may have different steps, but it is, as we talked about before, recommended that you have a PCR test, even if the country that you're visiting doesn't require it, and many do. France does not require it. They do recommend, Viking does recommend, as do I, having a COVID-19 test within 72 hours of departure so that you know whether or not you may be testing positive and not even have, and be asymptomatic. So that when you get to the ship, you're not going to be, after your first day of testing, turn back to go back home or have to quarantine there because, you've tested positive. So we do recommend highly that you get a test for COVID within 72 hours of departure, even if the country that you're visiting doesn't require it. So we did the Verifly app. We took the PCR test here in the States and, had that paperwork with us when we arrived at the airport. And then we also had to have a health declaration form for the French government. We completed that as well. And so when we got to the airport, the interesting thing is that the airline checked those forms before they checked us in. They checked them again when we got to the gate. So I think it's really important that people know that you need to have that information with you. And that's not something that you can pack in your luggage or not, have with your ready documents when you're boarding the flight. So, and then another really important thing to note, I think, is that we recommend to our clients that they have multiple copies. So obviously you have to have your original CDC vaccination certificate, but we recommend that you take a picture of it with your phone so that you have documentation of it, even without the physical card. And as well as copies of the PCR test you took, and any other paperwork that you need to have to enter the country. You have multiple copies, one with your paperwork that you're carrying with you, and then maybe separately somewhere else in your carry-on bag or your check luggage, so that you have these extra copies if you need it along the way.
Okay. So now we arrive in Europe?
Yeah, so when we arrived in France, we again had to show some paperwork when we went through customs and immigration, our passport, and the COVID vaccination card. We had actually applied for France's version of a COVID passport, and that was sent to us just before we left. So we also had that. Traveling through France, it was required in restaurants and museums and any public venues that we have proof of vaccination with us. So we did apply for that pass sanitaire, which is the COVID passport, and that allowed us to just have that QR code on our phone and show it at those venues instead of having to carry our physical CDC card with us throughout the country. So that was really convenient. But again, that is not a necessary step. It's something that if you have time to do and is convenient for you to get that pass, you can do that. And again, it's specifically for France. But yes, we had to have all that paperwork when we got to France, but it was relatively simple. I mean, it wasn't complicated, and we did spend 2 nights independently in France before we boarded the ship. Again, Viking does not require a COVID-19 test to board the ship, so on this itinerary, so we didn't have to worry about that after we arrived in France. And then our first test after that was once we were on board the ship. The first morning that we were on board the ship, we had a COVID test on board.
So we're going to go to protocols on board.
Yeah, so we have, as many people know, Viking is testing daily, and these tests are conducted in your stateroom. It's a saliva test. It's non-invasive. It's not these, the nasal swab tests that everybody feels like the Q-tip is going all the way to the back of their brain. The little vials that you see on the screen are what was left in our cabin every night in the bathroom. And then in the mornings, we had to provide a saliva sample in the tube and then put those tubes into these envelopes, which each day were required to be returned to guest services at a specific time. This particular envelope was 9:30, but most of them were 7:30. It's really all based on when the ship arrives in the port and when people are getting off the ship to do their excursions. But it was as simple as that. We just provided the saliva sample, stuck it in the envelope, and brought it down to the front desk every day. And then, as most cruise lines are, they're taking extra precautions to make sure everybody is safe. Masks, this is really important and a question that I get a lot. The masks were only required to be worn when we were moving about the ship. So when we were seated in the dining room or in the lounge or anywhere else on the ship, it was not required. It was not required on the upper decks outside. In France, we were only required to wear a mask inside of venues, public buildings, shops, restaurants until we were seated, that type of thing. So it really was not, it did not inhibit our experience at all. And I think people really worry about that. But, when you're going from your cabin to the lounge, it's, 2 minutes. It doesn't take that long. And then you can remove the mask and enjoy the experience. So, and they had hand sanitizers everywhere. They had them in the dining room. They had them when you got on and off the ship. And the crew was following strict protocols with, mask wearing and that type of thing. So we felt very comfortable that people were taking every precaution to, keep safe. So
I guess we have a video of you boarding the Viking River. So
yeah.
we go to that.
Yeah, so this was the morning we arrived at the ship, and the ship really only had 85 guests on board, so it wasn't very crowded, and it certainly wasn't crowded when we arrived. But as soon as we got on board, you can see they have the banner for the protocols that they're following on board, and then the hand sanitizer stations were right at the top of the stairs when you walk in the door. Right here in front of you, you'll see the hand sanitizer, and everybody used that getting on and off the ship. And they were on all floors at all doors. So, the one thing for somebody like me who likes to use hand sanitizer is that I loved having access to it whenever we needed it. So, and then you'll see downstairs, you'll see it right at the bottom of the stairs on each side, both hand sanitizers, hand sanitizing stations.
Thank you.
So, and the crew all wearing masks. So we felt very safe on board. And I felt like the rest of the guests on board really also followed all the protocols. So that was really good. And then this was something that was new on board, which was the checking in and out process. It used to be that you would turn your key card in at the front desk when you got off the ship, and when you got back on, they would give it back to you. And it really, created lines and things. But this is a new unit that they're using on the river cruise ships, similar to what they use on the ocean cruise ships, where the guests can check themselves on and off the ship just by tapping their card on the little sensor. So you can see it just says, welcome aboard, or have a great day, depending on whether or not you're getting off the ship or getting on the ship. So it was very convenient and easy.
That's great. Let's see what's next here.
So I think that the protocols are obviously different on the ocean ship. I know somebody posted a picture of the UV robot that Viking has that goes around and cleans the public spaces. Obviously, the river cruise ships don't need that, but I have to say that the crew on board cleaned that ship constantly. I mean, they were constantly cleaning the steps and the railings, and I mean all the railings. So, I mean, they're really taking extra precautions to make sure that people are not spreading germs, and that it's safe for everyone.
Okay, you've got departure testing is another question.
Yeah, so I mean, aside from being tested daily, the other question that we get a lot is, how will the test be provided for us to get back into the U.S.? So obviously, the U.S. guidelines require that all guests arriving from outside the country have a COVID test within 72 hours of arrival in the United States. And so this is actually provided by Viking when you disembark the ship. The last test that you've taken will be provided to you so that you can use that for entry into the United States. They provide the paperwork to you to take with you. And the question that I get a lot is, what about if I have an extension afterward? How is that provided? So Viking will provide a test for you on the very last day of disembarking the ship, which should provide you within that 72-hour window, provide a test result for you within that 72-hour window that's required by the U.S. for re-entry. So they actually take care of all of that. If the guest is traveling on their own after the cruise, then they would have to obtain that test on their own, which most of the time the concierge at the hotel will, allow you to, give you some places to get that test. But the most significant change in that U.S. reentry requirement is that now they will allow you to use what we call a monitored home test kit. So you can buy this Abbott monitored home test kit and take it with you outside the country, and then just take the test before you arrive back into the U.S. And it's monitored by a doctor. So the test is taken while you are doing like a Zoom call or a web call with a licensed physician. That physician is monitoring the administration of that test, and the results are given within 15 minutes. And once those results are given, the doctor provides the correct documentation that shows, a negative or positive result for you to be able to get back into the U.S. So if people are going on an extended journey past their time with Viking, they can use this Abbott test to get back into the country. But it's very, very important that the Abbott test that you purchase is a monitored test. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Let's see. So that's amazing. So we've got the arrival into Europe here, departure testing. And we talked about this. That's the requirements to arrival in the US. We were talking about new EU requirements.
Yeah, so a lot of people are asking me about the new EU requirement or the recommendation by the EU to their member states regarding U.S. citizens and, whether or not they're going to restrict U.S. citizens in the country. So the recommendation was made by the EU to their member states that they impose some additional restrictions for U.S. citizens. And so far, we haven't really seen much implementation of additional restrictions, with the exception of the Netherlands. The Netherlands is the only country that has actually imposed a quarantine restriction for U.S. guests. So that has affected some travel into the Netherlands and home from the Netherlands. But other than that, most of the only implementation from that recommendation has been more along the lines of a required COVID test for certain countries. And most of the restrictions that are being implemented apply only to non-vaccinated guests. So, nobody is going to fit into that category if they're traveling on Viking, because Viking is required that all guests be vaccinated, as are most cruise lines, and most tour companies. So, right now, the biggest change has been with the Netherlands, and we've seen the cruise line adjust the schedules accordingly to accommodate that rule. And specifically, the Netherlands has said that guests that are transiting less than 12 hours will not be required to quarantine. U.S. guests that are going to be in the country, arriving in the country for extended stays, would be required to quarantine from 5 to 10 days, depending on their vaccination status. But what we have been doing for our guests is adjusting their schedule so that they meet the 12-hour transit time and not have to worry about the quarantine. Viking has also adjusted their schedules to have some of their cruises leave from a port in Germany, which is not far from Amsterdam. So the guests arrive in Amsterdam on their regular schedule and then are transferred from Amsterdam to Germany to board the ship and continue on the journey just as they would have. So those itineraries that are affected so far really only run through September. They haven't really addressed anything through October. I think that the feeling there is that the Netherlands will adjust their requirement to better suit U.S. travelers. So, John, I don't know if you can hear me, but I can't hear you.
Yeah, anything else that we didn't cover yet?
No, I don't think so. I think that's pretty much it.
Okay, we've got some pictures from your cruise of the crew, so we can go to that. Let's see.
Yeah, I just wanted to share that, the cruise, as I said at the beginning, was really outstanding. The food was outstanding. The weather we had was outstanding. And again, our trip was not really inhibited at all by the COVID restrictions that, we had to follow. But the highlight of the whole trip had to be the crew. The crew was so happy to see us and so excited to have guests on board that you can tell they just were really excited. This is Peter. He is the manager of the restaurant on board, the food and beverage manager, a really outstanding. He's been with Viking for many years and just really went above and beyond for everybody that we saw on board. He just really went out of his way to make sure everybody was happy. So this was our server, Adrian, who just made us laugh every night. So he was so happy to be there. And you could tell these people really loved their job. We had such a great time with them. So there's Peter again. One night, the crew, we took a picture inside the ship, and then in order to have their full face, we had to go outside because they're not allowed they're not allowed to be on the ship and not have their mask on. So we went outside to take the other picture. So this is Bruno. Bruno was one of the beverage servers. He was always working so hard to make everybody happy. So we really enjoyed having him. And this was our chef. Our chef was from Portugal. Again, we had some of the best food we've had on a Viking cruise, and he just really went out of his way. Every day, I think this is so interesting, every day on the Aquavit Terrace, he grilled out something different that was not on the menu. So some salmon, some days it was chicken, some days it was a ribeye, but it was at lunchtime every day he did a special grilled item that wasn't on the menu, and everybody really enjoyed that.
Yeah, the food looked incredible.
Yeah, it really was incredible.
It really is.
So this is Maria. She was also one of the servers in the dining room. She just, she brought a smile to your face. She was always so happy. And even though you couldn't see her smile, you knew she was smiling because you can tell in this picture, her eyes, just the crew was just so happy to be there. And I wanted to just have a special shout out to them because they really made the trip very, very special.
I hope they get to see this.
I do too. And that's Adrian again, constantly joking around. But he always made sure everybody had what they needed, so we were always very happy. And that's Bruno. Bruno made a special coffee for me. I told him that I had gone to Starbucks every morning to get a coffee with almond milk, and he made it every day for me. This is one of the days he brought it to me. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
It looked like a wonderful time. Like I said, the food looked incredible. It looked like you were on an ocean ship, not a river cruise.
Yeah, I don't know how they make all that food in that little kitchen. I mean, really, it was very impressive.
Yeah,
so
no doubt. And I think that might be it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, wow. Thank you for sharing that. It's great to see everybody cruising again. And what I wanted to ask you is, so here we are, we're talking to all these amazing Viking cruisers, people that have cruised maybe a few times or many times, or just even haven't cruised yet. How many Viking cruises have you been on?
I think this was my 15th.
So we can get it from the source here. Was it any different other than a few side steps to do some testing here and there? Was the experience the same for you?
The experience was definitely the same as far as quality. I think that we really enjoyed the enthusiasm of the crew. I think that's something that you can't replicate, after so long of having them not be able to work and, them not greeting guests on board. That enthusiasm was just so apparent. And, but overall, the experience was very much the same as it normally is. It was an inconvenience to test every day, but that was really it. It was just an inconvenience. It wasn't anything that was, inhibited us or was an annoyance or anything like that. It was just an extra step we had to take. So honestly, it really didn't bother us.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing all that. I think we covered quite a bit. I know a lot of like I said, a lot of your customers are asking all these different questions, and we hope that we help the group. But now we want to turn to questions. I know we've got some waiting. This is a great opportunity for the group to actually be live. I know some people reply after the fact, which is fine. We appreciate all the comments. I know Michael monitors them and I monitor them. Please make a comment even after the fact. But if you're here live with us and you have a question or comment, let us know what vacation or cruise that you have booked with Viking or any other line. Let us know you're here. We want this interactivity. If you have a specific question to protocols or anything on any different line or with Viking, please ask now in the comments below, and we'll get to them right here live. I see someone just made one, so thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Let's go to the comments. Let's see. All right. So this is from someone from the group. How are river cruises beginning in Basel and ending in Amsterdam being handled with a 10-day quarantine required?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and the cruise line is adjusting the guest schedule to meet the 12-hour time limit that is allowable for Amsterdam. So they are adjusting their schedule so that the guest spends a minimum amount of 12 hours. I mean, a maximum amount of 12 hours in Amsterdam and avoids the quarantine requirement. So we had guests that were affected by the September 4th announcement from the Netherlands, and we adjusted their air schedules so that they, could experience their trip with as little inconvenience as possible. So I think many would be disappointed not to be able to see Amsterdam, but to be able to get the 95% of the rest of their trip in, I think is very satisfying to them. So I think, after a year and a half of no travel, I know that my clients are very happy to travel. And while they were disappointed to have that change, they were still thrilled to be able to go on their trips. So we have many people on the Grand European and the Rhine right now that were affected by that change. But, their trip is happening, and I'm getting emails every day about what a great time they're having. So.
Great. And then we have another question. Tammy Reddick from Facebook. She goes, did you have to get your daily results before you were allowed to leave on the daily excursion?
So no, I believe the tests for the river product, because they're not actually tested, the tests are not actually processed on board like they are on the ocean product. The ocean product, the tests are actually tested on, the results are actually processed on board the ship. On the river product, they're sent to a lab. So the answer to the question is no, we did not have to wait. If the results were given, they would be given after you return from the trip. But the truth is, on our sailing, and I just think this is the truth with most of the sailings, there are no results that are given every day from the tests. I think that if a guest tests positive, then they were informed of that, and the protocols are put in place to address that situation, but results were not provided to us every day. I believe the only time they would provide the results were the very last day of the trip, so you had those results to present for entry into the U.S. But we didn't come back to the ship with an envelope that had our results in it. I think that if somebody did test positive, they just informed them of that and then followed the protocols for having that person quarantined or removed from the ship.
Well, thank you, Tammy, for that question. A great one. And we have someone from the Viking group. Welcome back, Michael. Sounds like you're in a wonderful cruise.
Yeah, we absolutely did.
And Sandy McKenna. Hi, Sandy. She goes, wow, that's amazing. Science is great. And she continues saying the Viking cruise are some of the best in the industry.
I would agree. I would agree 100%.
And we have another question from I believe the Viking group. They say, sorry, I joined late. We're on a Caribbean cruise in December 2021. Will there be a similar question and answer for that itinerary? Thank you.
Yeah, so since those sailings don't actually start until late November, December, it would be hard to have the firsthand experience for that itinerary, but we're happy to answer your question here today if you have one. So just submit it here and we can see if we can answer them for you now.
Great, thank you. Do you have a certain time that you have to do the test by?
Yeah, so every day we were given a deadline to turn in the test results to the front desk. It was printed on the envelope that we received in the cabin that we had to turn them in by 7:30 or 8:30 or 9:30. Again, it really fell in line with what we were doing that day. So if the tour was at 8 o'clock in the morning, then the test had to be turned in by 7:30 in the morning. So it really wasn't, it didn't inhibit our experience at all. But, it was a test that we did every single day.
Okay. And then Kathy Bopp from Facebook says, she's waiting for our Grand European next June, but in the meantime, I really enjoyed Michael sharing his trip. Oh,
thanks, Kathy. I know I got a lot of great feedback on what we shared every day. And, I made it a part of my day to share the lunch menus, the dinner menus, and our experience off the ship. It actually made it more enjoyable to share it with everybody and know that everybody was getting excited about their trip watching our trip. So thanks for being a part of that.
So I've got a question. Are these headphones really making me look better?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. All right. All right. Excellent. So were you able to go off on your own or just with the Viking excursions? This is someone from the group.
Yeah, so in France, we were able to explore on our own. So we were not required to be with the group for excursions. So, we spent, and on this particular itinerary, one of the most interesting parts where we were there late into the night or even until the next morning. So we got to go off and explore a lot on our own, and I really enjoyed that part of it.
And we have Marcia Sutter from Facebook. She was looking forward to the Hawaiian Sojourn cruise in December.
It's a really, really neat itinerary. So I know that we've had a lot of interest in that itinerary and has sold very well for Viking. So congratulations to you, because I know you're going to love it. It's a new itinerary, and any of the experiences on the ocean, even if it was a cruise to nowhere, I think would be an outstanding experience. So I hope you enjoy it.
And then Tammy Reddick had a question for you, Michael. Have you ever done the Elegant Elbe? Am I saying that right?
Yeah, so Tammy, no, I have not done Elegant Elbes. It's one of the only river itineraries I have not experienced. But I have sold a lot of it, and I know my clients really have enjoyed it. I think it's very, very nice that are very smart, I think, of Viking to take that itinerary in the summertime and make it cities along the Elbe, where you move from one ship to the other instead of actually sailing on the river cruise ship, because there are so many water level issues in the summertime on the Elbe. So they do offer now Elegant Elbe and then cities along the Elbe, which are somewhat similar as in what they offer, but just you move from one ship to the other to avoid the water level issues in the summer. So it's on my list, Tammy.
So we're getting down. We have no more questions. If you have any more questions to ask, we're all out of them. So if you'd like to make a comment or say a last minute hello, please do now. Otherwise, we'll be wrapping up our live stream here. It's been a pleasure having you all here and covering so much great stuff. And I think I have to adjust myself. I think I'm falling into the banner here. But it's been great having everybody here and answering, finding out exactly what it takes to go on a Viking River cruise. I mean, you can't get this firsthand information just going through a message board or a group.
Yeah, I think it's really important, as we've mentioned many times before, and not specifically just me. I'm just saying it's really important to work with an expert that can help you answer those questions. When I see a lot of questions on the board that I think to myself, oh my gosh, I wish they would ask that of their agent, because it sometimes it's an opinion question, and those opinions aren't necessarily the right answer. So yeah, but message boards can be very, very helpful. And, I think I think it's so great that everybody is so ready and able to share their experiences with everyone. And I think that can be really helpful to people. Right.
And if you're looking for to work with a professional top global producer 5 times for Viking and so many other different lines, contact Michael Consoli. Call him at 1-800-913-7245 or michael@planmycruise.com. And you can't beat that URL, planmycruise.com, to book your next cruise. And just give him a call, ask the question, because why don't you go right to the source, and rather than just going through a group all day. Sometimes that's why you want to work with a professional travel agent and be a client instead of a customer. I think so. See,
and John, I just have 2 things to share before we finish. Okay, one is that I really want to clarify that the experience that I explained is my experience with our trip with France, and they can vary. And so you do want to make sure that you follow all the protocols that are required for your specific cruise and your specific destination. And Viking and your agent will share that information with you along the way. It's just very important to pay attention to those details and make sure you have all of of what you need for your trip. So make sure you cover all those bases. It's going to make your trip a lot easier and a lot more enjoyable. And secondly, I want to thank everybody for not pointing out how tired I look today, because I'm absolutely exhausted. But because traveling back from Europe and then going into a full work day was not the easiest. So I thank everybody for not pointing out how tired I look.
And no one picked on me for my headphones, so.
That's right. That's right.
And Marcia said, "Thank you for sharing your experiences, Michael. Your daily updates made me really anxious to get back to cruising."
Good. Thank you so much, Marcia. I'm glad to hear that.
So yeah, so much great information. We thank you all for staying with us throughout this live stream. And of course, thank you for Michael for sharing this great information. And it's great to see the smiling faces of the crew. I do have a little concern. I was a little concerned about seeing that wonderful food, because I wanted to crawl right through the screen because that looked so good.
Yeah, it was very good. And we should also mention, John, that if anybody has a topic they want to hear us talk about, we'd be happy to discuss it. You can put it in the comments and let us know what you might want to hear about, or what questions, what topic you think would be a great topic for our next Facebook Live. Yeah,
we really appreciate the interactivity and all this back and forth, and people that are still watching us live, we really appreciate it. We hope to build on this and do more and more. And we thank you so much. Even as tired as Michael is, he's joined us tonight. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, John. I appreciate it.
So with that, we'll bid everybody a good night. Happy cruising, planning for your cruises. If you need to contact Michael, his information is down below. I'm sure he'd appreciate the business, and a client for life. So thank you all, and I hope you have a great night and a better tomorrow.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.